The Bonus Babies podcast is going to take a short season break, so this is the last episode of this season. Please check back with us again in November to hear more compelling, true-life, hard-hitting, first-hand accounts from the foster care maze. Thanks for being out there and enjoy the episode. Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
Prior to that, the neighborhood gang members would ask me constantly, when are you going to get in the gang? And when are you going to join? You know, your brothers are gang members, and they're already giving me a nickname. And it was scary. It was very scary. So I remember one day I was walking home, and there was about 5 or 6 guys waiting for me at the dead end. And they're like, well, we're going to jump you in. And I'm like, you're not going to jump me in. Like, I'm not going to gangbang. I don't want to gangbang. It's not for me. And so they said, well, you're going to fight us every day until you get in. And so I fought every day for like 2 months. Every day, day in, day out, for like 2 months. And then finally, like I had it. I decided to bring a hammer one day. And one of the guys was like, well, I guess he's had enough. And so you're going to be from the gang? I'm like, I'm never going to be from the gang. You guys can keep doing whatever you're going to do, but I'm not going to be from the gang.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA. My guest today is a really incredible guy, Angelo Melendez. Angelo was orphaned when he was 2 years old and sent to live in a group home at 2, yeah. Thankfully not for that long because he was fostered by Howie and Carol Cohen. And you can hear Howie tell his story in episode 21. They had already fostered a couple of kids, but they call Angelo the one. And they wanted to adopt him. After many happy years living with Howie and Carol in Beverly Hills, the court decided that the best thing for Angelo was for him to be reunited with his blood family. So he was sent to live in East LA with his Aunt Mary, who he didn't know, and his 3 half-brothers, who he didn't know either. So then there were 8 of them living in a 1-bedroom house in the barrio. It was confusing. He didn't know where he belonged. He calls it his riches to rags, rags to riches journey. And he's still wrestling with it. Angelo is a very brave young man, and his story is really difficult for him to tell. But he's doing it for us now. I am here with Angelo Melendez. Hi, Angelo.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm really glad you made the time to do this with me. I know you're a super busy guy. You work at night. You got small kids. All right. So can you tell me a little bit about who you are? Where are you from? How are you raised?
My name is Angelo Melendez, born and raised in East LA. My upbringing was fairly dynamic. My mother passed away at the age of 2. I have no recollection of my actual birth mother whatsoever.
Right. So when you were 2, she passed away.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She passed away of heroin withdrawals. She was incarcerated in downtown Los Angeles within the Twin Towers Correctional Facility. And I actually was able to meet her cellmate who was also in heroin withdrawals and was with my mother the night she died. I believe she had a heart attack, and by the time the guards got to her, she had already passed.
All right. Have you spoken with that cellmate?
Yes. I was kind of odd the way I got to meet her. I made some mistakes in the past, and unfortunately, I was forced to attend Narcotics Anonymous sobriety program for about 3 months. While going to the meetings twice a week, somehow my face, this young lady, well, not young lady, she was probably in her late 40s, 50s. Somehow she remembered my mother's face and my face. We looked very much alike. And she walked up to me and asked me if Renee Melendez was my mother. And I responded yes. She continued on with the story. So it's very odd how I came across the woman, but it appealed to some closure.
Yeah, so that's kind of great, actually, in a way that she recognized your mom and you, and then was able to tell you about your mom's last moments.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was also, during my first meeting, I presented myself, and the reason for me being in those programs, during my teen years, I had a very heavy marijuana usage. I used to smoke a lot of weed, a lot. And it was an addiction. Thank God today, I no longer smoke anything. I'm a fitness guy.
I can tell.
I'm what they call a lab rat.
Lab rat, gym head, right? Yeah.
So, but again, it's these bad habits that unknowingly and we pick up from people that we look up to. And sometimes we're just not given the best mentors when we're growing up. And so with that being said, I think it came full circle, my mother's addiction and me falling into a bit of addiction. I was able to experience a bit of what my mom experienced, not to the same extreme as heroin, but the whole dependency. And, I'm glad that I was able to break that cycle. I'm not sure if it's so much genetic or, I've read that addiction is genetic, but I'm not sure. Because, I do find myself in these addictive habits. I'm trying to get to a certain tone in my life where I give myself a certain amount of discipline. It's no longer about principle and standard. It's more about discipline. And it's not so much that I want to be better than who I was or better than everyone else. I just want to hold myself to a higher standard and just be more accountable. These are things that, growing up, I was forced to learn on my own growing into adulthood. It wasn't as if, my parents, I'll go back to that when I refer to my parents.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? So what happened when you were 2 then?
So when I was 2, I went into a foster living situation. And I believe at first I was in a all boys group home. And
when you were 2?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I went into a group home. That was the first set. I don't really remember much of that. I have a few photos. And in the photos, I'm a scared little boy standing in the corner with a Cabbage Patch Kid named Angel. But yeah, the majority of those pictures, I'm just very much secluded and alone and isolated. And I don't believe I want to remember much of that. So as the story goes, as my mom likes to explain it, her and my father, Howard Cohen, my mother's Carol Cohen, they both had their careers in their life. They were at a stage where their careers were at a plateau. They were making great amounts of money. They had a good lifestyle. They already had 2 children of their own, aside from my mother's older child, Christina, which she's, married. And, I have my older sister, Johanna. She now has a family. And I have my older brother, Jonathan, who, he went through his own trials and tribulations. But I'm just glad that I have a family. So in that essence, they found me in this group home, as the story goes. And my father looked into my dark brown eyes and my thick black hair. And we made this connection. I'm not sure if it was the intensity of him seeing, how much I really needed help and assistance, and was just a lost boy. And, I'm thankful every day that they came into my life.
Yeah, when he talks about you, when Howie talks about you, he says that they just knew you were the one.
And so when I first came to live with my parents, we're living a beautiful house on Deep Canyon Road. And we actually lived across the street from Sylvester Stallone. And we lived in a great house and had these outrageous pool parties. And yeah, it was amazing. I've never lived in such a more extravagant household. So I became very accustomed to it, going to pick up my brother at private school and my sister going off to college, poker night every Tuesday, meeting all my dad's rich friends and going over to all my dad's rich friends' houses and these rich parties. And I'm going to the Gap. I didn't even know what the Gap was. And I'm going to KB Toys once a week. I remember we had this housemaid, which she went on to become a very successful Hispanic lady. She moved out to North Carolina, and her and her husband actually started their own janitorial service. And going back to that, I ended up growing real close to her son. She would bring her son along, and she would clean the house, and I would play with her son. And now that I look back at that, the reason that we had such chemistry is because I was one of the only Latinos in the house. So, we spoke Spanish and we made beans and rice. And I think that was the one essence of my culture that I had. And I really enjoyed those memories. I still have them. I keep them very close to my heart. If it wasn't for living in that Deep Canyon Drive in Beverly Hills for those few years, I most definitely would not be the person I am today. I remember my first video game system. I like to mention video game systems because I'm very analytical. A lot of what I do, working in logistics and dealing with diagnostics. For one, video games was my very first introduction to analog, hand movement, patterns, infrastructure, levels, difficulties. And so with that, I was able to apply that whole layout to life. And I thank my parents for that. I don't think they really realize that, but, playing Atari and playing Super Nintendo and going to N64 and them taking me to video game conventions and getting me a laptop to play online. And it was just kind of this whole concept that I ended up applying into my life. It really works for me. I manage my life as if I'm playing a role play game. Each and every compartment of my life is well balanced because I'm able to take a step back and look at each different compartment. And again, that's due to living with my parents. They exposed me to different dynamics of life, and that would be the rich side. And then, speaking of taking a step back, I look at it, and those are really some of the most precious memories in my life. It's a really nice childhood. So that was one portion. A few years went on. I believe I was about 7, 8 years old. I'm not sure the age. And the state of California decided that it was in the best interest of Angelo Melendez to go back to his family. So I had an aunt. Her name was Mary Gonzalez, completely illiterate, completed up to 5th grade. But she had all the love in the world, and she was willing to accept my other 3 siblings, the oldest being Anthony Melendez, my second oldest being Vincent Lima, and my youngest being Renee Melendez. And so the courts decided that it'd be in the best interest for all 4 of us brothers to be together. And so they granted custody over to Mary.
And did you know your brothers before that?
No.
So you went from Howie and Carol's place in Beverly Hills to living with Aunt Mary with 4 boys.
And her mom and her mom's husband in a 1-bedroom.
Wow. So how did you feel when that was going down?
That was pretty crazy. 31 years old, and I think it's only now I'm stepping into my 30s and stepping away from all the bullshit that I can actually decompress something that happened to me so long ago. I just recently forgave my parents.
Right. What do you mean? Yeah. What do you mean by that?
I carried this resentment for a lot of years because I thought that, or I felt that they could have did so much more to, fight for me. And I spoke to my mom and, just recently, 29, we had a conversation, my mom and my dad. They laid it out, and basically the decision wasn't in their hands at that point in time. And there was just a lot going on. And they thought it would be good for me to be with my brothers in essence. And they thought, maybe if they just stood in my life, that that positive energy would be enough.
Right. And that in California, and this is true elsewhere in the country, the big push now is reunification.
Yeah.
Reunification. And what you're saying is that maybe that wasn't the right thing for you. And
Well, I got exposed to a very dark element. As you can see, you see my hands?
Yes. Yeah.
I have a lot of tattoos.
Yeah, and it looks like your hand looks like a skeleton, actually.
Yeah, it is a skeleton. I feel very close to death. I've lost a lot of loved ones in my life. And then when I say that I've been exposed to a lot of dark matter, essence, growing up in East LA, there's a certain attitude that you have to develop in order not to get picked on. And, unfortunately, moving back to East LA, I had no idea that both of my older brothers would go on to become very successful gang members. So that kind of leaves footwork for you, and it kind of leaves a certain, your family and your brothers have a certain level of respect in the neighborhood you grow up in, and everyone else expects you to fulfill that certain level of respect. And again, I am so thankful that at, I think it was 13. I was 13 years old, and I used to walk home from middle school. I was in 6th grade. And we lived in the dead end, and I lived there all my life. And the dead end was called the zapato. And the zapato in Spanish is basically the dead end, the shoe.
The shoe.
It's like a horseshoe.
Right, a shoe.
Like a horseshoe. Prior to that, the neighborhood gang members would ask me constantly, when are you going to get in the gang? And when are you going to join? Your brothers are gang members, and they're already giving me a nickname. And it was scary. It was very scary. So I remember one day I was walking home, and there was about 5 or 6 guys waiting for me at the dead end. And they're like, well, we're going to jump you in. And I'm like, you're not going to jump me in. Like, I'm not going to gangbang. I don't want to gangbang. It's not for me. And so they said, well, you're going to fight us every day until you get in. And so I fought every day for like 2 months. Every day, day in, day out, for like 2 months. And then finally, like I had it. I decided to bring a hammer one day. And one of the guys was like, well, I guess he's had enough. And so you're going to be from the gang? I'm like, I'm never going to be from the gang. You guys can keep doing whatever you're going to do, but I'm not going to be from the gang. And luckily, his father came out of the house and said, leave Angelo alone. He doesn't want to gangbang. Can't you tell? You guys keep fucking him up. He doesn't want to gangbang, obviously. Leave him alone. So he left me alone. From that day forward, I got respect in the neighborhood. And I started growing my hair out. I had hair down to my waist. I started skateboarding. I basically searched for a different culture that was also outcastish and rebellious, like where people would still feel intimidated by my presence, but also would leave me the F alone and knew I wasn't a gang member. So I kind of found a niche. So I started skateboarding, and I was into punk rock. And that's pretty much how I escaped the whole gangbanging thing. But as for tattoos and smoking weed and ditching school and hanging out with the wrong crowd and partying every weekend, staying out, not coming home for days at a time, I lived pretty outrageous for a good period of my time due to the fact that I just came back to East LA. I think elementary was kind of weird. I remember that because I just came back from Beverly Hills, and I didn't really grasp the concept of getting in line for lunch or not getting picked up from school, sitting in front of a fan, no AC. Just some of the most simplistic things, now you take for granted when you have these luxuries. But I remember very much in detail how I felt the difference, the huge difference in my atmosphere, in my environment. And thankfully, I was able to adapt, because I seen multiple individuals that grew up in East LA from the beginning of time that broke. that got picked on every day, that didn't have respect, didn't have friends. And so, you know, I'm thankful I was able to adapt to my situation. But the way I look at it is like an animal having to adapt to a new habitat. And that's exactly what it was. You know, I wasn't a child having to adapt to a new environment. It's as if I had to become an entirely different species.
Right, because you were just trying to survive, right? And were you able to tell anybody about this? Was there anyone to talk to about it? Aunt Mary or Howie or Carol? Or you just out there on your own?
I didn't develop my communication skills up until my early 20s.
I see. So you just kept it all inside.
Yeah. Or I used my fist.
I see. Right. So what happened in high school then? Because then you, for a little while, you went back to Howie and Carol when you went to Venice.
So I was 8th grade. I was finishing up middle school. Had a close call with my first love. Thought she was pregnant. Thank God she wasn't. Anyways, long story short, same time, a few months later, I went to a school dance and I got caught with a knife and a joint. I got arrested and ended up in juvenile hall.
For a knife and a joint, you end up in juvie.
Hey, I didn't show up to court.
So then you didn't show up at court?
Mm-mm. I didn't have a parent. Mary wasn't going to show up and wasn't going to tell my parents. I didn't even want to tell them. And then I relocated to Venice Beach without telling my parents, enrolled in Venice High. So basically there was a warrant out for my arrest at that point. And so I went to my freshman year, my first semester. And again, it didn't really matter where you placed me now. I was a completely different animal. I was no longer this nice little brown-eyed, innocent Latino. Now I was this big, mean punk rocker looking for his next thrill. So first semester in freshman year, I ended up getting to a couple fights with the Shoreline Crips. I picked up on the wrong girl. I was trying to get my first African-American girlfriend in Venice Beach. That was my goal. And I met, yep, I'm not going to lie. That was and I actually did. Her name was Erin.
And you got her. You got her, too.
I did. But I had no idea that her ex-boyfriend was this young man nicknamed Blue Devil. And he was from the Shoreline Crips, and so were all his friends. And long story short, I was on my way to 5th period, and we crossed paths. And he asked me for my Walkman. At that time, you know, everyone had a Walkman. I had a Sony Walkman. And he's like, "Oh, I like that Walkman, man. Let me get it." And I looked at him and punched him in the face. So I basically was the aggressor at that point. I initiated the beef. But where I came from was no hesitation. You take the first punch. You don't let anyone get the best of you before you have the opportunity. That's just what I was taught. Like I said, I didn't have the best mentors. A lot of my so-called friends in the neighborhood were big homies. They were older gang members that knew I could scrap, knew I had heart, knew who my older brothers were, and knew my respect. So they're like, even if I wasn't a gang member, they knew I could fight better than some of the other gang members. So I took the first punch at this guy, and we got into some beef. About a week went by, and I was waiting on Lincoln Boulevard in front of is that In-N-Out? It's In-N-Out. It's about a block away from Venice High.
Yeah, right near Washington Boulevard, right?
Yeah, you know exactly where. And I was waiting for the big blue bus, and I'm sitting with Erin, and she points at 2 vans, and she's like, "Hey, here they come." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, "Yeah, they're going to try to fuck you up." And about 6 or 7 guys jumped me. I didn't ever tell my parents. So I went back to school the next day. I gathered a bunch of guys that I knew, and we basically rumbled with the Crips in I think it was like in 5th period, like right after lunch. Like right as lunch ended, we ended up confronting them at their little hangout spot, and we rumbled. And Venice High actually has I don't know if they still have it. They had an open campus policy, so you can go out for lunch and come back. So we ended up chasing a couple guys out, and we didn't make it back in time, and I got locked out for lunch. And long story short, I had to call my mom and say like, hey, they're going to call you from the school because I didn't make it back in. And then she asked why, and then I told her why, what was going on. And then she had basically decided at that point that, might as well just go back to East LA because you're doing the exact same thing. So we went back to Venice High the next day, got my transcripts, called Mary and said, hey, I'm going to be moving back. She wasn't too happy about it. I wasn't too happy about it. But I remember being excited for some weird reason because I was going back to where all my friends were, because the riches really didn't matter to me. I was comfortable living in the regs. And so I went back, and she drove me over that same day. We took out the transcripts. We drove over to Garfield High on the opposite side of town in East LA, on the east side. And I enrolled in Garfield High for my second semester of 9th grade. And I rekindled my relationship with my first love. Her name was Cindy. And we started dating again. But none of that really mattered because I wasn't going to class, wasn't getting good grades. And I ended up dropping out of high school in 9th grade. I didn't go back after my second semester. I ended up moving in with a girlfriend. I ended up leaving Cindy. I ended up moving in with another girlfriend named Diana. And her mom had just got into a divorce. So there was a void. There was kind of a vacuum there where they needed kind of a man presence of some sort because she had a little brother. So I ended up moving in. And that was kind of my first real relationship at like 14. I was already working. I was already cooking. I was already washing dishes. I was already taking care of, infants or younger sisters. And that was pretty outrageous. And during this whole time, keep in mind, I had a warrant for my arrest. I ended up deciding one night I was going to go get, bread. So I got on my bike and I went to the panaderia, the bakery. And on my way to the bakery, I see a police following me. So somehow someone got a tip that I had a warrant. And they ended up reporting it to the police. And there was no reward, but long story short, it ended up being Mary who found out where I was living. And she wanted me to figure out my life instead of living with this girl and this woman. And so, I got arrested. I went to juvie for, I was there for about a month.
What was that like?
I seen a lot of my friends. It was kind of like an initiation. I remember when I went to juvie, it was kind of like, okay, so this is what it's going to be like. And that was a really fucked up idea, a real fucked up concept to have in my head for me to think, oh, this is what it's going to be like.
Right, that's your future, right.
I remember my first night there, I already thought, I'll start doing push-ups. And so, I remember walking into juvie and they put me in a cell with the African-American. And he wants to start talking to me. But there's another cellmate, and he's the key holder. He's the guy who passes around the gel and the deodorant. He's the one with the juice. And he looks at me and he shakes his head. And right then I knew, the line in the sand, the racism.
So you couldn't talk to your cellmate who was African American. If you did, it was going to fuck you up.
Definitely. And I knew that then and there because, of growing up in East LA, it was just like that. I remember very sadly and unfortunately, if an African American family would move into the neighborhood in the barrio, it's really sad to say, but it's seriously like this. They get a knock on the door from a gentleman-like individual who's a gang member and says, you have 30 days to move out. Your type are not welcome here. And they leave. And if they don't leave, then they understand, the consequences. And I've seen it happen. And I knew that. Young on that we just weren't supposed to mix for some reason. There was just this racism. And I never liked that. I always hated it. I didn't understand why because, I remember being in group homes with all kinds of kids. And so I had all kinds of friends. And I remember when I lived in Beverly Hills, I had all kinds of friends. And it was something that I never really got used to. And I'm thankful of it because that never was truly me, being a racist. Now I have a lot of brothers that are my homies. But I learned that that's part of the dynamic of the environment that we live in. Unfortunately, those guidelines and those boundaries are everywhere around us, even if we try to ignore them, even if we're trying to reestablish them or break those walls down and those barriers. Some people are it's old fashioned. I think it's really old fashioned, and it's a sad quality that just don't agree with. So.
All right, what happened then? So you're there for a month, and then because you're not that guy now. So
what happened? I got shot.
Wow.
I got shot in 2006, Christmas Day, 2006, 9 a.m. in the morning. So, got out of juvie, decided that I wanted to change my life. Ended up joining a construction firm and doing heavy machinery installation. Started at 15, 16. And that kind of kept me busy, away from the neighborhood. But Mary was sick. She was diabetic. And she would get these diabetic sores. She was obese. She would get these sores in between her weight here in her stomach in the crease. And they would take forever to heal. She would be in and out of the hospital. She would go into diabetic comas. She had high blood pressure, the works. So Christmas Day, I was going to go visit her. I was walking to visit her, and a guy pulls up on me and, "You gangbang?" I'm like, "No, I don't gangbang, but we'll fight. You want to fight?" He said, "Oh, I don't want to fight." And he pulled out a gun and started shooting me. Luckily, I was with one of my cousins, and my cousin pulled me out of the way, and I only got shot in the arm one time, but that was enough for me to change. I had my daughter, and I had my other daughter. But I honestly think that person that I was from 9 years old all the way up until 19, 20, that was never me.
And do you feel like you're you now?
No.
You're still trying to make that journey.
I still feel like a lost little boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a grown man. I'm 31 years old, and like I said, everything looks great on the outside. I have a great job.
You have a lovely family. You've got a woman that adores you. You've got 2 little girls.
But it's never enough.
Right. So talk to me about you mentioned something about complacent and non-complacent, and that you vacillate back and forth.
Yeah, I'm sure you can tell by the conversation, complacent and non-complacent. So, sometimes I have a really focused train of thought, and I know what I'm doing, and I can see what I'm doing, and I know what the next step is. I realize what I need to do. The realizations come real quick, and then that's probably only 25% of the time. And then 75% of the time, I'm like a tennis ball in a closed room bouncing off the walls. I don't know what to do with myself. And it doesn't matter how much infrastructure I try to put into my life, I still feel as if I'm bouncing off the walls all the time. I mean, it's difficult.
Right. And do you think you're a good daddy, Angelo?
I know my kids love me. I think I'm a good father, but I think I could be a better provider. But I think those are internalized due to the exposure that I've had of having such luxury as in my childhood, So I always feel there's like a void in the tank. There's like this, like I can do all this, but I know there's so much more I can do. And I just don't have it in my grasp at this point in time. And I don't know if I ever will. And I think that's a fairly depressing thought, but I won't think about that too much.
Like you think you're not going to be able to have the kind of success that you want to provide for your family and have the cushy life and the travel and the...
I'm trying to let go of the chip on my shoulder, and it's hard. I've lost a lot of good opportunities because of an attitude that I developed at a very young age that sometimes takes over. I'm trying to let go of it.
It's interesting to hear you talk about yourself this way, because Howie talks about you like you're a goddamn hero. That you have...
Because I give him my best qualities. My dad knows all the good things I do, but...
No, but he has some idea of the struggles you've had, not to the degree that, of course, the truth of it. He knows it hasn't been easy for you. He knows you've had scrapes, but when he talks about you, he he glows. His words are glowing. His eyes are glowing. He's smiling because he sees something in you that you don't yet, I think, see in yourself.
Well, I'm trying to. I'm trying.
So if you could right now, where would you be? Like in your dream of dreams. I don't mean like your material things. I don't mean like a house. I mean like how you feel. Where would you be if you could be? Instead of a tennis ball in a room, what would you be?
A dolphin.
And why? Why is that?
Because I'm a shark.
And you wish you were a dolphin instead of a shark.
Doesn't life seem much more funner as a dolphin than it is as a shark?
Yeah. It seems to be a happier life. I mean, I don't really know because we're not living it. But
yeah. Sometimes, I don't want to be the predator anymore. I don't want to be the aggressor anymore. I don't want to intimidate. Like I said, I'm trying to let go of all those qualities. I know I'm charismatic. I know I have confidence through the roof. I know I have a great smile. I know the pride is there. I know there's so many good qualities about myself. It's just the reinforcement of it, letting go of all the negative and enforcing all the positive. It's a lot harder when you can just bask in the comfort of accepting, instead of challenging yourself to be better. I think for a long time I just accepted it. Like, it's okay. I accept it. This is who I am. I accept it. Now I'm totally different. Or I no longer accept anything. Question everything. I'm questioning a lot of things about myself. It's kind of odd that, this podcast is happening at this certain point in my life. Questioning a lot of things about myself. I'm taking a personal inventory of everything: people, qualities, diets, fads, habits, and realizing what I really need, what I need to let go. Who do I really need? Who do I need to let go? Who's weighing me back? Who's pushing me forward? And if there's any message that I could give to anyone that's listening to this, is never doubt yourself. You will survive.
Let me ask you something, Angelo. This is a question I ask everybody, but what is the one thing that no one would know about you unless you told them? Is there something about you that no one would know unless you told them?
I'm completely antisocial to the core. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to be nice. But look at me. I manage a department, or 3 different departments of over 300 employees, where I'm dealing with all kinds of situations every night.
You're
social media.
Yeah, you're a charming, affable guy.
I mean, my social media is through the roof. So, people wouldn't really realize this about me. Like, him, antisocial? No. But, when no one's around, I think I'm a Grinch sometimes, or a grump.
So you put on that persona in order to just get through the day, just so you don't have to deal with people saying, "What's the matter? Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you smiling? Why are you such a Grinch? What's the matter?" Right.
Yeah. So I got to say, hi, nice to meet you. Hey, how you doing today? Oh, everything good? All right. Yeah. And you can even hear the tone in my voice. It completely changes.
God damn it. Wow.
Like, literally, this is my conversation every night walking in the door. Hey, boss, how you doing tonight? All right. What you have for lunch today? You know me. Same old protein. I'll see you in a bit. Don't forget, check your emails. Yes, turn on the notifications. Okay. And then I'm just walking in. Oh, good evening. Oh, good afternoon. Oh, buenas noches. Oh, ¿cómo estás? Oh, how you feeling? Oh, how's your back? Oh, come here when you have a moment. I need to talk to you. Hey, you forgot that. Hey, excuse me, sir. Sir, excuse me. Come here. I just wanted to apologize the other day. I came off a little harsh. I told you need to pick it up, but you've been here 3 weeks, and I think, you need to pick up the speed. If you need any more training, hands-on, let me know. I'll come over. I'll help you. Thanks. But that's completely fake.
Yeah, okay. I want to ask you something else then. Why is it? What makes you such a good manager? Why do you have so many people working underneath you? Why have you been given that responsibility? You're obviously doing it really well, even if you feel like it's fake. Why is that?
I guess the fake me has a very, I don't know if it's fake, maybe the real me. I mean, I'm a standout in the crowd. I'm a leader by fault. So.
You mean a leader by default? That's your go-to, that you are the leader.
I like to lead.
Uh-huh.
It's something I actually enjoy, making the right decisions, leading my team to victory.
You like the power,
accolades,
right?
I like all that because I don't have. I mean, growing up without control, growing up without power, without any sort of establishment or recognition, and then going into an industry and working your ass off and gaining experience at one company, and then leaving that company and going on to different companies and continuing to be successful. It speaks for itself, So when people see my resume, they automatically, there's a certain level of respect they speak to me with. And I like that. I definitely like that. So I guess work or my profession, managing, it's funny because I guess it was something that I was craving my entire life. If you look at it in essence, the irony behind it was being able to manage my life. And so it tied into looking into what type of work. So I guess if I really think about it, why I like to lead and why I'm leading is it's natural. It comes very naturally, but I think because I was unable to lead my own life to a certain aspect for a good majority of time,
Yeah, so you're making up for it now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been managing for 11 years now.
Wow.
It didn't take me very long to realize the manager doesn't have to do much, but he gets paid a lot more. And then they're like, oh, you speak 2 languages? More money. Oh, you write 2 languages? More money. And so I guess for me, it's always been about trying to make my parents proud, I know my parents' income, and I hope one day God hopefully blesses me with that income. But whenever we talk about my profession or work, which is the majority of what we talk about, because that's the majority of what my parents want me to thrive for, is being career driven. We don't talk how much are you making an hour, we don't talk how much was your paycheck. When me and my parents talk numbers, how much are you making a year? And so for me, it's always about trying to make them proud, and it's never enough. I mean, even, I'm trying to give myself credit for small accomplishments and big accomplishments and the recognition I've been given. But in my heart, I feel like it's never enough. I don't know if that's always going to be there, but, if you're listening to this, parents, I hope I make you proud. I'm trying to find my passion, So a little more about me. I do art. I write poetry. I paint. I used to do a lot of graffiti. Now I paint canvases. So I think I'm going to try to take another dive into that and see where it takes me. But I really want to get my creative juices flowing again.
Yeah, you might find it really, really satisfying and really healing too.
Yeah.
I want to see some of that when you're ready. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank you for talking to me today, Angelo. I know this has not been easy for you. I know you're totally out of your comfort zone, but...
Yeah, I'm pretty blunt. That I carry over my actual personality and my professional personality. I'm very outspoken. So I think if you pull the right strings, you can get me to talk, And so today was, that was good venting out. I just want to say thank you to you, and thank you for listening and hearing my story. And I'm going to keep on surviving, and I'm going to keep on searching for the characteristics that I want in the man I want to be one day. I still have a long road and I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm thankful that I'm able to realize a lot of this before it's too late, you know?
I know you can do it, Angelo. The shark in you is going to make you the dolphin.
Yeah, maybe I'll just be the shark for now, because it's a lot of blood in the water.
Okay. You've been really forthcoming, so thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
When I hear Angelo tell his story, I can't help but think the system failed him. I mean, the system is constantly failing kids. We know that. Many of the stories we hear on this podcast say exactly that. They affirm exactly that. But this is an example where Angelo could have been adopted by people who loved him, who wanted him. And there was no one in Angelo's life to speak for him. This is why we need CASAs. This is exactly why we need CASAs. Because the CASA would have asked Angelo, what's going on with you? How are you? What do you want? And we would have gone to the court and say, this kid belongs with the Cohens. Can you make that happen? And Angelo would have had a much easier childhood. He wouldn't have been beaten up every day after school for 2 months straight. He wouldn't have lived in constant fear all of his adolescence. He probably wouldn't have gone to juvie. He would have been a much happier kid and a happier, more well-adjusted adult. And he deserved that. He deserves it now. I know you're working hard, Angelo. You're working hard on yourself to process all of this. And I hope you find your dolphin. I really hope you do. If you see something, say something. If you suspect that a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's a ton of other information online as well. Just hunt around. I want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful music, Eferisto. To hear more from music, go to Spotify and Instagram at Christina Aposto. That's ChristinAposto. I know you want to. Her stuff is really great. And thanks to my audio producer extraordinaire, Marcos Campito. I'm glad I found you. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear, please rate us and hit subscribe.